Welcome, Priyanka. It's a pleasure welcoming you on our platform. Namaskar, on the essence of life and growth. I'm sorry for this glitch, but I am stuck up on the road and one of my wheels has got flattened and it's cut now. So I have to change this after we finish our session today. I am very happy to welcome you on the essence of life and growth. We've been holding this for the last 2 months. And, we have had people from all walks of life come in and talk about the various aspects of essence of life, how they perceive from their own life experiences. Now, structurally, I keep this session for people who are having about 45 years of experience initially, which I kept primarily with the focus that in about a span of 4 to 5 decades, one is able to see how different seers, different economies, structures change and grow in life, and they are able to see all colors of life. But technically, for last 2 months, I have structurally kept about 4 to 5 people who have about 10 to 15 years of experience as well, so that all dimensions of life can come in and not just the dimension from an elderly perspective comes in. So we 360-degree review process comes in. We've tried to keep the process simple. It's basically your own life perspective. We want to bring in positivity in the environment. That's why we started this series, and that's what we have been doing for the last 2 months. Before we begin, I would like to begin with a disclaimer, and that is that the views being presented here are those of the speaker and the moderator, and they are not to be taken of the institutions they represent or the organizations they represent. We are also observing all norms and nomenclatures as advised by Ministry of Home Affairs for conducting online Zoom meetings. And as a result, we have taken a secure platform at Zoom. Also, we are keeping the audios and videos off till the end of this session, after which you are welcome to open up your videos or raise your hand, and we will bring you in for asking questions to the speaker. And so I thought I should just begin with that. I am very happy again, Priyanka, to introduce you. Priyanka is an anchor. She's a writer. She has been a tennis player, and she has lived in various worlds with most time in India and the United States. She has been an executive producer and anchor for the News India Junction, which is based out of Delhi. And then she's writer of the Vion News, which is a Z Media company, but she anchors for various channels and she's been moderating large number of sessions herself. We first got introduced at All India Radio, where she was the moderator and I was on the other side. Today, I am the moderator and I'm on the other side. So it's interesting life which is there where we switch chairs and switch positions. And I'm very happy, Priyanka, to welcome you. I'm going to put you on spotlight now, and now I will, if you can unmute yourself or I'll unmute you so that then we can have your session. But as I told you, I would like, before we begin my interview on the essence of life and growth, I would like if you can actually share a little bit of the insights of your own life as a young child, in the age of 6, 7, 8, then who grew to a teen, then a person who grew to be working, studying in the college, and then working in different environments like the United States or even in India. How has that perspective of life, per se, changed with every decade of that movement of your being built up? If you can share that to begin with, and then we begin with my question answers.
I think that's, first of all, I commend you for being on the side of the road and anchoring. I think All India Radio, when I was a moderator, was much easier with the studio setup. So thanks, Professor, for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for being here today. I think my childhood has been very different in that sense. I come from, I started playing tennis at the age of 6. And my first tournament was at the age of 8. So I was spending about, in the beginning when I was 6, maybe an hour, but then within 4 months, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours on the court. And I started, I took to the sport and I started playing. My parents thought that it was, the level of tennis was much more competitive. There were a lot more opportunities in the United States. They, of course, wanted to shift to the United States as well. So I went over there. I basically moved to Chicago as a very, very young kid. Started training over there exclusively. I got a scholarship to train. And then I was just playing, and that was for the most part my life for a good over 25 years. So I knew nothing except the tennis court and maybe going to school occasionally. But I would always go back and forth. You know, the one thing that was unique is that my parents, we were a very nuclear family. And, you know, when one parent wanted to come back to India to visit their family, you know, they didn't certainly didn't have the resources or the time because the other one would be working. So they couldn't take care of me at home. So I would have to tag along with them to India. So as a result, I think I spent at least 2 to 6 months every single year in India. And of course, during my summer vacations from the school year in the US, I used to automatically want to come back, which it helped in a sense because it I don't know how to describe it, but I think that I was able to keep my roots in a way that you know, versus some of my Indian American counterparts who had no clue of what India was or what the languages were, what the customs and traditions were. And to be fair, I grew up in a major metro, so life was very, I guess you can say, westernized over there. But at the same time, I think it just being part of a very big extended family on both sides of my mom and my dad's side, we were able to keep intact, I guess, the most important things. So I tell you this because 3 master's degrees later, I decided to make the move to India. It was an election year, and I wanted to get into broadcast journalism, certainly digital journalism, because I do think that that's the future of journalism. And I decided to take the plunge and move continents after Harvard, turned down all my job offers, and came down, started a YouTube platform during election year called New India Junction. And it covers positive development across India. So we've done some really, really nice pieces. I write for it, I edit, I script, I post-produce, produce as well with the help of a phenomenal team. And I think the platform, as well as all of our team members, all of my team members and me especially, have grown as a result, both in terms of knowledge, in terms of skill, and you know, just in terms of where the field of journalism should be going.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's very nice in terms of the outlook which you presented, you know, talking about your movement. But could you also highlight as to how your own understanding of life and growth, you know, changed with time as you grew up and moved from one destination to the other? Sorry, your voice seems to have muted. Just a second.
Yep, I
Yes.
think we got it.
Yes.
So as I said before, I think most of my life was on a tennis court. I think the biggest things you learn are sportsmanship, hopefully sportsmanship. And I think the other thing that you learn is immense sort of discipline, sticking to a time schedule, all those things. But more than that, I think the outlook for me, what impacted me the most from being on court for so many years and competing and playing against, you know, anybody from a sore loser to a champion I knew who was going to go miles ahead of me in tennis. I think the most important thing I learned to look at is just a very fair perspective. Make a fair judgment. You know, it's never a good idea to go on a tennis court and judge someone before feeling out their game. You always have a 10-minute warm-up session to kind of gauge where their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think that in terms of life and growth, that has been my biggest asset, that I'm able to come and look at a situation fairly and objectively, both from kind of putting myself as an outsider, rather than putting my own ideologies and you know, I guess if you want to say prejudices in and stereotypes in that I've acquired and seen. It does allow me to have that ability, which I think is very, very strong, especially in, I mean, it's an asset in journalism. Because if you can, what I've noticed, at least journalism in India versus the United States, or you can even compare it to the United States, depending on your viewpoint, journalism, at least some of it, tends to be very polarized. And you have to kind of have that ability to step out and see, okay, what is right and what is wrong here. So I think that that's been one of the biggest things that I've carried with me from the court, I guess from on court to off court, in terms of growth, because it really has helped me everywhere. It's helped me academically, it's helped me professionally, and it helps me personally as well in terms of relationships and who I decide to talk to and who I decide not to talk to. I'm kind of guided by that factor.
True. Thank you for that insight into your life. Could you outline, in your opinion, what could be the key essential factors which determine the essence of life and growth?
I think key factors that determine life and growth. That's a loaded question, Professor, that you're asking. But let me give it a think. I think one of the things that determines is it's an age old saying. I think every sports person on any field or any court has heard it, and we've learned it at a fairly young age, because as I said, I started playing tennis at 6. You can always judge a person based on their line calls in tennis. So and that gives way to their personality. So if a person is cheating or making bad calls, it says a lot about their character and their personality. Now, obviously, you cannot play tennis with everybody you meet, nor should you. But I do think that you need to be able to gauge their character. So I think that character is definitely one thing. I think the ability to be honest, even in times of difficulty, is another thing. You may have a match point and nobody may have seen where the ball has dropped. But you can win it, but you won't be happy winning it. You'll have a sense of guilt underneath. So the ability to be honest is another thing. And I would say, just carrying sort of the sportsmanship kind of trend, since we're talking about tennis, the ability to lose gracefully. You are going to win, you are going to lose. It's inevitable that you will lose. I've lost quite a bit. But take it as it comes and take the good things out of it. And try not to repeat your mistakes, and even if you do repeat them, try again not to.
Thank you for that insight. As a sportsman, you live with a lot of volatility which comes, and you don't know what is going to come from where, whichever sport you play. And similar is life. We live with a lot of uncertainty in life. It's been groveling on. And when I look at economic history or even history of human mankind, we see uncertainty which has been building on year after year for centuries now. It's not something which is new. It's been there for quite some time. The pace of uncertainty has increased with technology and a lot of other advancements, but the uncertainty still remains. Despite governments, individuals trying to do a lot of activities, trying to induce a lot of stability, but this is there. Now, given that kind of an uncertainty, how do you induce certainty for your own self? Since you're a sportsman, how do you induce that certainty in your life performances, in your life growth, in your life development, in your own self?
It may sound cheesy and it may sound cliche, but the first thing that you should always do is keep fit, because the moment you let yourself go, you're going to be unproductive in everything else. So whatever it is, you have to find a way to exercise, keep fit, because it first of all, it reduces your screen time. And now when you're talking in times of uncertainty with COVID, we're spending a lot more time on screens, whether it's Netflixing, whether it's Zoom conferencing like we're doing now, whether it's on our phones. So you have to take some time out, be away from the electronics, work on your body and work on your mind, because it does give you a sense of stability. The second thing that I would say is, in terms of uncertainty, I would always, I've always been an advocate of a side hustle. You should be doing something that you love, but you should be always kind of doing something on the side that you love as well. So in addition to this YouTube channel, I have always, I really enjoy working with students, and especially for higher education. I've applied to 3 master's degrees, so surely some part of me, I don't even know which part, enjoys the application process and the academic world. And I really wanted to help students kind of, a lot of students don't have the belief that they can get in to, the top schools, so they never really try. So I do a little bit of education consulting on the side as well. And that's purely because I want to. It gives me a sense of satisfaction. So, you know, whatever you may be doing, you can always should take time out for yourself and do something that you really like. And, you know, hey, in today's day and age, it's a digital world. So you can always turn it into an opportunity for yourself. You don't have to do any free labor. So I think when you're talking about times of uncertainty, if I'm not mistaken, the Prime Minister wrote and urged young working professionals especially, and working professionals in general. I mean, you're never too young, you're never too old. But he did urge them to, try to turn what they're doing into a digital medium and onto a digital platform. So now all of a sudden you have tennis coaches giving many more virtual lessons. You need not be on the court, you can practice against a wall. There's so many, innovative ideas, even for something very traditional like tennis, where you need a court, a racket, a ball, and an opponent, and a coach. But in these times, you have to adjust. And the people that adjust and are able to kind of get onto the digital world and digital platforms are the ones that are going to go ahead. That's why I said before, I think journalism, yes, broadcast journalism will always exist. Especially in India, many people still rely, especially in tier 2 and tier 3, on traditional broadcast mediums, I would say, which is print, newspapers, television, and radio. But at the same time, I think the digital world COVID-19 has given India an opportunity to kind of revolutionize the digital world and build it up from here. And if a lot of young people kind of get on board, especially when it comes to education, when it comes to startups, when it comes to transforming what they already have into some kind of digital stream, this is how you protect yourself, especially in India and the many countries that are struggling with COVID right now in times of uncertainty, in my opinion.
You know, I remember my time when being in college, and I saw lately for last about a year or so, you have been hopping from one college to the other, interviewing young minds for last year or so. I've been seeing you've been doing so many documents. I remember my time, we used to be very carefree. We did not think about the future. We did not worry about the future. We did not know. Do you think the times have changed? You know, my young times of the college age has passed 25 years now. So do you think the times have changed, or still the youth is as carefree as it was with retailing to uncertainty, or even thinking about what they want to do or not to do tomorrow?
I don't think there's a change. But I do think a sort of positive development is that there's a lot more exposure. So for example, especially during election year, 2019 were the national elections. And I did get a chance to, as you said, hop around colleges and speak to many youth, not just in colleges, but, in rural India and across, major metros to rural India, I guess you could say. And the one thing that I noticed is they are, number one, more fearless. And the reason for that is because they are exposed. Everyone has a smartphone these days. If they don't have a smartphone, they have a friend who has a smartphone. They have access to all of this information. Whether if they are consuming news, now major social media platforms that perhaps a few years ago when they launched were purely networking and social media platforms. Now they are major news players in the game. Facebook has news, Instagram has news. Every major platform that's coming up and doing well has a media aspect to it. So in that sense, I think youth are much, much more well informed, no matter where they are in the country. And this is very powerful. So I think automatically when you have this kind of exposure, when you're aware of the opportunities, and when you're aware especially of some of the opportunities you may not have access to, or if a person in rural India, if they do not have access versus a kid in a city who has very easy access, that person in rural India is definitely, or that youth in rural India is definitely aware that they don't have it, and they are looking for ways to get it. So in that sense, I think there's a lot more focus. It's not that they are not carefree, but I think that they are much more aware of what they can do and what they're capable of. And, it's very inspiring to see. It's one thing that as a child, I never got to travel across India. Every time I came down from Chicago to India, it was always to my home and, just very familiar places. So I never got to see India. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to move here, just so that I could see, every breadth and corner of India. And this was one of the most inspiring things I saw, that, a youth in rural India now thinks that he or she can he does have that capability to change the world. And this is, I think, the correct attitude. So I think it's, if anything, a positive thing.
True. I remember when we invited you to address our students also a couple of months back on Kashmir, and I'll come to that issue a little later as to how is the life spurring up, because you saw it firsthand. Even while everything was shut down, you had the privilege as a journalist to move around, see the beautiful Dal Lake and others. Apart from the people, more important were the people, the beautiful people of Kashmir, and meet with them. You went to schools also. I saw some pictures of you. So I will come to that part of life. But before that, I
Sure.
would appreciate to talk about how does one go about celebrating life? How do you go about celebrating life?
Oh, you should always do that in every possible way. One thing that my first intern mentor told me when I was 16 years old is, Priyanka, always simple things, right? If you get a very positive email at work or something, always have a folder that says wins in your inbox, and always put those good emails in that folder. So, when you're just having a rough day or things just don't go according to plan, you can always refer to that folder, and it really worked. You get your mojo back. So I think that in the same way, you should celebrate your small wins, because, there's everyone is sort of in this race, and everyone is, wanting to be the best, and population has exploded, so there's a lot more competition, and that's just a fact. To get into schools, to get into colleges, it's always been there. If anything, the pressure has just built up that, if you're not a superstar, you will not get anywhere in life. That's what I've grown up with, at least. So you always strive to be the best, and it gets stressful. So I think you should, just take some time off and celebrate. If you don't have time, my problem was I never had time to celebrate. It was one tournament win or one tournament loss, and then you're just on to the next tournament, or you're on to, I was a policy debater nationally as well. So you're on to the next debate, or you're just on to the next thing. And then, you have your homework, and then you have this, and then you have that, then you have commitments you have to go out with your parents. So there's just no time. But I do think that you should take out, that's one of the things that I possibly regret. You should take time out to spend with your friends. Instead of playing a tournament, hey, it's not going to make a difference. One weekend is not going to make a difference in your life. So if you're really happy with something, or you've won a tournament, take the next weekend off and enjoy with your friends. Because I think you'll be in a better place mentally to perform even better. Perhaps if I had taken more breaks, I would have been more well rested mentally, not just physically, but maybe mentally, to perform better and with a more positive attitude. So celebrate the small wins, especially at work. Do simple things to make yourself feel better. Like order that cake or order that brownie. It's not going to make a difference. Keep a positive folder in your inbox. These small things add up, and they're really important in the long run.
Like one of my speakers, Dr. Chandrakant Panda, who is from AIMS, who is the head of the department of AIMS, said that, the corona is a guru corona. He referred to it corona as guru corona. And a lot of them have speaker, even the Hollywood actress said that it has been given her time to introspect into her life. So I think you got 3 months break. The Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, gave us all 3 months break to introspect, think about, enjoy those aspects of life which we all have been missing in terms of rushing from one place to the other and forgetting about them. Although you can't order cakes, but at least you can make them, whatever kind of quality you can, and that's important. So given that, how do you see the next 6 months to a year shaping up?
In general, or for myself?
Globally, not specifically with India in specific, globally. Positive
Yeah.
people's life because of these
Mhm.
lockdowns. Some of them may
Yeah.
have suffered the other way around also. Like I keep fighting with my wife now and then, but that's part of life. If you don't have 4 utensils and they don't make noise, then there is something a problem. If there is noise
Yeah.
with 4 utensils around, then there is no problem. So my fights with my wife are good in a way, and that helps me understand her and under her understanding me. So all of us have got those kind of times. But then, what is there for us, in your opinion, as a young, bright, uh, a person who has another 60, 70 years of her life ahead of her, seeing you in India because you've seen it so closely lately, because as an outsider, when someone comes from outside, he looks at things more carefully than someone who's been living here itself for decades. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, how do you see next 6 months to a year shaping up?
You know, one of the most interesting things that I've observed myself doing, and I've observed a lot of my friends doing, who are all young working professionals at this point, or who are completing, their master's degrees or their higher education at this point. One very interesting and probably astute sort of observation that I've noticed is, as you said, they're not just taking time to reflect, but they are taking time to reflect specifically on, you know, these are the things I've done, and these are the things that I really want to do. Now, when you're in a race, you really don't have that time to, you know, everyone has this is where I want to get, and that final goal. Some may not have that, that's okay too. Or some may have, you know, sort of short-term things. But what I've observed is that, you know, when you take the time to sort of reflect and kind of observe it in a time where you're just completely on a break, or you're at home and you know, your working circumstances are different. People are looking to kind of mesh at this point their personal passions with their professional work. Now, a lot of friends I know have not done that. You know, they obviously, the ones who are lawyers, for example, they love the study of law, but perhaps they're not happy with their circumstances. So they are saying, you know, I wish that my circumstances while practicing law were like this or like that, or I would like to, you know, read about this a little bit more. And I would like to maybe incorporate this in my workplace once we start up again. The biggest change that I think in the next 6 months that's going to happen, you know, I think that for me at least, you know, since I cover political topics specifically, so you know, one of the biggest, that when it really hit me, even though I've been working from home for the past 3 months and completely through digital means, one of the biggest things that hit me was watching that bilateral summit, because I have been to summits before, and a lot of people go, and you know, it was interesting to see because it was very well planned. But at the same time, it was a bit unnerving because I was like, oh gosh, you know, it's not like just after the lockdown, this is going to go away. I think this is the way things are going to be for the next few months. We have to learn to live with coronavirus. It's a very real thing. Now, in terms of the economy, there have been pandemics like this before. I'm quite sure the economy is going to bounce back, even though it will take some time. Professor, you would know that better than me. But I do think that in terms of people, and how they are to adjust, you know, the reality sort of has to dawn on us that, look, this is going to be the new normal. Like, you're going to have to just get used to more conference calls like this. And it's unnerving, you know, to sit in front of this type of a screen all day, because the personal touch is gone completely. And that takes some time to get adjusted to. So I think that is the biggest change. And, you know, it's very easy for me, as I said before, to say you have to, you know, move on and start looking at digital. But I think the biggest thing that you have to really look towards is how much digital you can manage during the day, and sort of build up your capacity, because this is going to be what the situation is for the next few months. There's going to be very little travel. There's going to be very little, you know, I just want to go away for the weekend, so I'm going to go. You'll do a double think if you have to do that. You know, I know that my parents wanted to visit the US a little while ago, but, you know, I was like, guys, you're senior citizens now. So what about, you know, the plane ride is okay. But what about the bathrooms? What about, you know, the public toilets? What about reaching that airport? What about getting in the cab? Have you considered those things? So we have to think about these things now. And these are things that you never even thought of or gave a second thought to before. So
True.
in a way, it's good because, you know, it's forcing India, I feel, to get digital. As I said, in terms of journalism, in terms of my field, people are still very nascent in terms of how they consume the news, I feel, especially in tier 2 and 3. But this is kind of forcing, you know, I'd love to see the government get more digital. I'd love to see individual ministries get more digital. And this is the opportunity that we can do so. And you know, I just wrote an article on WION, in fact, that if the ministries get digital, completely digital, I mean, transform the way that they work, it's approximately 10% of our domestic GDP. So it can help us, and this will
Yeah. Priyanka, I wonder if you're still able to hear me. I have this technical glitch of Wi-Fi because I'm using my mobile Wi-Fi. If you're able to hear me, just say hello. And in any case, I wanted to go on to the next point which you were to highlight. Hello. Priyanka, if you're still there. We think our guest has got connected, so we should be able to get her in another 2 minutes. I will just try and reach her. I thought it was my Wi-Fi, but it seems she has got disconnected. So we will try to get her in a second or so. I think, have you got disconnected? Because I'm on. Yeah, I'm just connecting back. Oh, I thought it was my Wi-Fi. Okay, please go back. No problem. No, problem. No. I'm just connecting back. Sure. Her who got disconnected. So we should be having her in another minute or so. I'm sorry for these disruptions, but today I am in a fix myself because I'm in the middle of a road, nowhere, not to know exactly where I am, but because of a jam and my tire going flat, I am very much stuck up for here another hour or so. But we will finish the meeting in another 15 minutes and open up the house for questions before Priyanka, after 2 or 3 questions I have in mind for her. In the meantime, I'm happy to share. She's joining. Just a second.
Sorry about that.
Not at all. I was under the impression that my Wi-Fi went off because it has happened
Nope.
once in off home. So
mine completely blew. So now I think we're back.
good. So I was saying. So you were talking about the way life is going to be ahead, and I think you're right in the sense that we need to have that perspective, looking at forward, and have the digital influx which is there, and take advantage of this kind of situation. I think life would be more better going forward. We have had time to rethink and get that positivity factor inside us, and I hope things would be better soon. Because what my studies show, when we have been trying to study at the institute for the last 4 or 5 months, various pandemics, man-made disasters, tsunamis, world wars which have taken place. And you'll be surprised that within a span of 6 months to a year, most things rebound back because things have not been utilized, things have not been used, people have craving for certain things. And as a result, things economy boosts up. Like we saw the pharmaceutical industry boosting up, the hospital industry boosting up in the last couple of months because of this pandemic. So there are allied services which boost up as well. So from that perspective, I thought it was there, but I thought I wanted your perspective because you move among with young minds all the time, especially in the last 1 year. I've seen since we connected, and I've noticed that you have been interviewing, meeting, and moving around.
Yeah, I think their focus, as you said, is they're not so worried as to whether the economy will bounce back. What they're worried about is, and their major questions are, how can I take advantage of this boost? Because they are aware that it will bounce back. There's no doubt that there will be recovery, in my opinion, especially among the youth and among college students that I talk to. They ask me questions like, what stream should I get into? What professions would be in demand when we're talking about digital? How can I contribute as an engineer to the digital sort of effort? You don't have to just be a journalist. You can certainly contribute in other ways, no matter what you're doing. So these are the questions they're asking. And I'm really glad that they're asking these questions, because on TV you hear economy is bad, and you hear Rahul Gandhi saying, what is Modi doing with the economy? And it's just a waste of time, and COVID is going to ruin everything. I don't think the youth have that that sort of attitude, which is very refreshing and very promising to see.
Thank you for that insight. As I said, I would wanted you to reflect a little bit about a minute or two about the way you saw Kashmir when it was opening up, when the article was changed about a couple of months back, especially from the youth perspective, from the schools you went to, from the children you met. What were their mindset? I would like if you can spend about 2-3 minutes, because it's been very complicated to understand the life of a Kashmiri, and that too, when sudden changes like this happen around the thing where all kinds of information is coming, more negative than positive. How does the young child, the young mind, the young India react to it?
Yeah, so let me, I think we got to interview the DM over there. We also got to see Srinagar when it was completely still shut down. It was very similar to the lockdown situation, actually, because, things were just starting to open up. So, we had army all over the place that were guarding for safety. But, it would be like your vegetable store or your fruit store, or everything would just open up for about an hour or two in the evening. People would kind of sort of venture out if they needed anything and then go back home. So that was the situation when I went over there. I think that people were actually very positive. I did a slew of interviews in Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. And I think the reaction was very, very positive. I was surprised, actually, because even I, from what I consumed and what I read before going there, as you said, there was more negative news than positive news. The feedback we got in terms of negativity is, we asked anything from the person driving us to just a person on the road. And we did, we spoke to, I think, anyone and everyone that we could over there without getting into trouble. But, in terms of negativity, I think what people were worried about at that point in time was they thought that they were free all these years in Kashmir. They thought that they had autonomy. So what they were essentially worried about is, if we become now a part of India, do we have to give up our freedom? Which I think was, come on, you've been that way for 70 years or that many years. I mean, you're naturally going to think that way. Like, what changes primarily, essentially what it was is uncertainty, I guess, as to what changes are going to come ahead. So that was the main apprehension of people. Beyond that, I think people in that we interviewed, people who are well informed of what Article 370 was, the women especially, were looking forward to the change, and especially those that saw atrocities happen. There were people saying that, we will do anything for PM Modi. We'll do anything, because what they've given us and from what we've seen, this is, we never thought that this day would come. So it brought a tear to your eye, because, I was just an objective sort of reporter over there coming, just someone coming from the US going to report and putting this documentary together. And the types of reactions I saw, especially from the Kashmiri Pandits there, we saw the way that they were living this entire time. We saw the way that, what their circumstances were. And then we also interviewed, we went to a school to interview some students and caught their reactions. And I think young India, as I said before, they were very well informed. And I was surprised on that. We thought that, honestly, we went in there and we said, we spoke to the principal, and they welcomed us in, because we told them what we were doing, what our aim was. We just kind of want to talk to the kids. And he was like, yeah, sure, come in. And we honestly thought, my crew and I, that we would have to prep some of the kids to have them speak on the mic. We have to kind of tell them what to do, what to sort of say, not in terms of their opinion, but just in terms of, but they, they honestly took the mic and they were like, I got this, it's fine. And they gave their own sound bites. And it was a pleasure to see that, because as I said, I think youth are undercredited, I would say. They're very well informed. They're very well aware of the opportunities. And if you see that documentary that I've done and the sound bites that we got from the kids, there were 16-year-olds that were saying, yeah, now we don't just have to go into a sort of quota that we had to do before. Now our opportunities are wide open. Now look, there's infrastructure that's needed over here. We can become engineers and build this infrastructure. We can take leadership roles. Why do we have to go outside to learn anything? Why can't we contribute to our own state? So that sense of pride was there. And that was very refreshing to see. That was a very good day for me. I was very happy that day.
I'm very happy to hear that. And it's important that we get the overall perspective, especially, this perspective you said that we are now being part of India. That's something which is quite amazing. And that's where people have been misguided. And
Yeah.
many of the times are misguided by some of these notions, which are there. And I've seen that happen across the globe. It's not only in India, but large part of the world,
Yeah.
where different cities, different countries have this kind of perceptions as well. Priyanka, the thing is that, there is a lot of talk about happiness. Large number of countries have been talking about introducing happiness index. Sarkozy gave this project to Amrita Sen to create one. Bhutan has introduced this. Some countries have introduced ministers of happiness, like my student who I interviewed the other day, I learned in UAE, they have a minister of happiness. Some countries have ministry of loneliness, trying to remove loneliness. Like in case of Finland, and I think Sweden, I think they have one, and then in UK also now they have one.
Yeah.
Happiness is not something like a pill which can be given, but then governments need to work constantly. They have been doing to make lives of people happy, more better, more constructed. What do you think, having lived in the US, worked in the US, and now here, what do you think can be done by various governments across the globe to induce happiness in lives of people?
See, I can say just, my personal perspective on it. Like in the US, when we're talking about a happiness index, right? And especially a loneliness index. Now, what happens there is you may be getting paid and you may be getting a great salary and you may have a penthouse and you may be earning 6 figures. But the culture over there, just the atmosphere over there, is a very independent and lonely atmosphere. Then that's just the way that people are brought up over there. That's just how it is. After 18, it's a very common story that you're on your own now. Don't come back to us. So a lot of my college friends were on loans themselves at 18 years old, student loans. They were funding themselves through college. And I'm lucky enough that I played tennis, so I never had to worry about loans. But I never, even if I did have to pay a tuition fee, my parents were always there to support me, both emotionally, luckily, financially as well. Not that I didn't want to take any money from them. That was a different story. But they were always there because that is not the Indian culture. Now in India, the situation is very different. Even after marriage, a lot of times, you still live with your parents. There is no notion, or very little notion, I would say. The families that can support, some are very sad cases, of course, but senior citizens, as compared to the US, I don't think that many senior citizens are being sent to old age homes. I mean, we wouldn't dream of, at least I would not dream of sending my mother to an old age home. She would live with me. No matter what my circumstances were. And that's a non-negotiable. And same goes with my father. Now, that is very much the culture there that, hey, go into this old age home and we'll visit you every Sunday, maybe, if we can. So when you're talking about happiness, I don't think that it's a uniform thing that can be across all governments, because the culture and the circumstances of every country and every culture is very different. Now, Finland will differ than the US, even though both are fairly developed countries, right? But they will still differ in their lifestyles and what they want to do. Now, for example, if you look at Germany, they are much more happier people, they say, because their work week is a lot less stressful, right? They prioritize the fewer hours. And some countries, I believe it's Sweden, they are taking that model as well, of less sort of work days. Some governments are inculcating the work from home once or twice a week. Some companies are doing that as well across the board. So happiness is not a universal thing that you can measure. But I do think what you can do and what a government could do is perhaps look and see what the circumstances are. And then when you're creating an index, make that index country specific. Or, in India, you'd probably have to do something that's region specific because it differs so much. Then you'd get probably an accurate measure of happiness. Because by and large here, I find that people are okay with having a lesser salary. Over there in the US, people would be very unhappy having a lesser salary, primarily because their home life is not the same as what you would have in India. A person earning less, yes, but they are coming to a full home at the end of the day. And these things make a difference to your mood, to how you behave, to what your habits are every day, to your loneliness factor, which also plays into happiness. So I think it needs to be specific, but yes, it should be done in every country. That is for sure. And I think it should be done in every region so that you can inculcate these things into your curriculum. Perhaps Indian schools should start. One very refreshing thing I saw is when Indian schools started putting a sort of spirituality / meditation program in their curriculum. And I thought that this was a really refreshing thing to do. In some places, maybe people enjoy playing sports, so you can put a little bit more focus in sports. You don't have to do it across the board because it's impossible to do so. But eventually, as more schools do it, you have a sort of meditation aspect, you have a sort of self-growth aspect or self-motivating aspect in your school curriculum. It's not just about books. It's not just about extracurricular activities. There is a self-growth aspect in an education curriculum. I think these things can come out of a good and accurate happiness index. And I think that you should do that from anyone when you're looking at demographic information, anyone from a school child, because they are citizens as well. That's where your happiness starts, to a working professional. Workplaces can easily implement this as well. Why not have a meditation seminar in a consultancy once a week? It's very easily doable.
True. Thank you for that insight. My last question before I open the house for questions is that what would be your message for the youth? I know you're a young girl, so it's not that you should not consider this, but then still, what will be your message, having seen different lifestyles, different forms, and especially more so since you've traveled across the country in difficult times, in challenging times in the last couple of years. So what is, in your opinion, would be the right message for the youth to go forward?
And I can say this from personal experience as well. I think from what I've observed is primarily students and parents put a lot of pressure, whether it's the student themselves or the parent or the young working professional, to just kind of take the safe route and build up your lifestyle. But hey, I'm a person that graduated from Harvard and then came to India and gave up a salary to do something that was really exciting and something that excited me, something that I was passionate about. So I think lesson learned, like if I can do that, and if I can say it really wasn't difficult to say no to those salaries, and I don't regret it. I really, really don't. I thought I would, but I don't. The one advice that I would give is, don't be afraid. Don't let these things like salary or, even if you're in dire circumstances, go for what you love, because you have a better shot at being excellent at what you love and what you're really passionate about. Because you will have that determination to fight your way through. Whereas if you go into a safe career, there's very little chance, I would say, that you would, or less chance, maybe that's a correct way to put it, that you will get to the top, because you don't have that fight in you. You don't have that passion in you. So this may be cliche, but I think a living example of it. Go for what you want, because I think the Indian economy is especially opening up for all types of careers. So whether it's sports, 10 years ago, people were very apprehensive about getting into sports. But I think that the more people do it, the more opportunities are created. And today, luckily we have a government that supports it. Tomorrow, who knows? We'll have a government that could be more supportive of it. So, really just go for what you want to do. And the country needs it. The country doesn't need more, we can always use engineers, doctors, and lawyers, no offense to them. But, the country needs everyone of every kind. So do what you love. That's the one advice that I would have to all youth across the board.
Thank you, Priyanka, for that great insight. Now I'm going to open up the house for questions. I have, I'm sorry, I had a few more questions, but given the fact that I have to change a flat tire, which is completely flattened, all torn off now, and I hope my stepney works in the car. But then I see I have people from Spain and Finland and a couple of countries who have joined us here today. And even
Awesome.
Mohammad Halim Khan Sahab, who was the former Secretary, Ministry of Finance, who has joined. I don't know if he's still around, but I do see Kai, who is there. And so I will
Well,
see if there are some questions, but we will refrain them to just one or two because I am perplexed with time today, and
sure.
I would I would like to
Perfectly understandable, I think.
I, another 1 hour of job before I can actually start moving my car back for home. If Kai is around, he wants to say something. Kai, very well. You're in Spain or in Finland now?
Uh, Fine. Hi. Yes, I'm in fact still in Spain, in Madrid,
Very
and
nice.
I'm about to pack up. Yes, because the borders now between Spain and France are finally being opened on the 15th, Monday the 15th of this month.
Uh-huh.
So I shall be driving with my car to France because I have something to do in south of France, and then slowly I'll be driving up to Germany, and from there I'll take the ferry to Helsinki.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So I'll call you on the matter again. Let's say I should be there around about the 20th, 21st, just
Okay.
for midsummer. Remember midsummer. Midsummer is very important in Finland.
Yes. Very well.
And
Kai was incidentally the Deputy High Chief of Mission of India 20 years back. And that's when we connected and we became friends. He was Minister of Economic Affairs and became the Deputy Chief. And then he has been ambassador at various countries. And apart from being
Great.
advisor to the Prime Minister of Finland. Kai, you have any comment?
I'm
He
honored that you would come and listen to me. Thank you.
Finland and the way Finland, Sweden, Nordic countries are looking at happiness. Any comment or question for Priyanka, Kai?
well, I don't know if you're aware of it, but in fact, there are some statistics in various global papers that recently have put up Finland as one of the happiest countries in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I I think it's a slight exaggeration.
It's blueberries. Kai, is blueberries on the streets.
Yes, but there's one thing perhaps Finland and also the Nordic countries, but particularly Finland is very strong in it, and that is, I mean, silence. We love silence. We want to get into the woods and just stay around, and that is exactly our place to meditate. This is very important.
I think it's the professor. I would say I think it's the complete opposite in India. I think Indians like noise and dancing and Bollywood numbers around. That is that's
Yes.
the happy place of India. It's completely
Yes,
the opposite.
Right.
But Priyanka, I must tell you, I've addressed the Finnish Parliament twice. And, they told me there that they have these wild berries, which I love as a breakfast when I go there having it in yogurt. Yogurt. It's beautiful. Every time I stay at Suko's Hotel, and I always have that. And that's just next to the Parliament. So I love it from that point of view as well.
Oh,
It's
it sounds good. I'm an introvert, so I'm all for silent places and just being by myself. I'm not finding that in India though very often.
that
So
the wild berries is free to take. It's a free product. So even if you have them in the gardens, you can
Yeah.
walk around and take them, and there's no question that no one can question it to have. So I think we need to have more free products available. Like mangoes used to be there, ganna
Yeah.
used to be there in the villages. So maybe more free products will help us.
more
go.
free products will help.
Yes, that's true. Yes, I remember. In fact, when I was posted to Venezuela in South America, that was a fantastic place. It's a beautiful country, as you very well know. 1 million square kilometers, and they have everything: oil, diamonds, you name it. But they also have fantastic mangoes all over the place. And in fact, yes, you could pick them there because it's still Caracas. Caracas, the main city of Venezuela, is full of so-called flowering trees and mango trees. This is very peculiar, and
Yeah.
this is a way of for also, how should I put it, for normal people who haven't got everything. They just pick those big mangoes, and they really are king size. I have been to Sri Lanka, India, but these in Caracas are really South American style.
Oh wow! I'm looking forward to having that. That's for sure.
Wonder if there are any more since anyone wants to raise a hand or ask a question, because then I'll end the session today. Kai, I'll have to cut the meeting short, but then whenever you're back in Finland, we need to connect, and it's been long we've not chatted.
Sure. I'll be happy, yes, to do it.
Yes. Anyone else who would like to ask a question? I'm sorry, I'm in a little hurry today. I'm sorry for being in a hurry. I've never been in a hurry in my programs, but today is an exception. Thank you, Priyanka. I think there are no more questions. I'd like to thank you for having taken out your time, have joined us, given that beautiful perspective, and I will trouble you more going forward in terms of areas which I'd like to bring in some practice from you. We are doing large number of programs. I thought I should bring them up. But I would like to share before I close today, as I do always, is that we are organizing large number of webinars. We have a European Parliament member addressing next week at the same forum. We have a tarot card reader who will be my next guest on Friday, which is at the same time. And then we have this seminar which we are doing tomorrow on how to do research. I have been able to get some good old friends of mine who have been editors of journals for a long time, and some people from India. So we have a galaxy of people coming in from different places. Like we have Professor Agarwal, who is our chairman, who will be the opening the session and giving the guest of honor address. After which we have Dr. Jackie So, who is the Dean of University of Macau and a professor. He's been the editor for Journal of Entrepreneurship. Then I have Georges Perrentin, who is on the board of Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel. He's a French by national, but he is on the board in Israel, and he's based in Israel. Currently, he's in Syria, but he will be back tonight to Israel, back in Tel Aviv. And then I have Mukul Asher, who has been various positions. He's been a chairman of the Planning Commission of Haryana. He's been the one who revised this pension system in India. Then he has been with the full professor of pension studies in public policy in National University of Singapore, and editor of various journals in the past. Then I have Joasha, who will be joining us from New York. He will be there again. He's also the editor of Law, Journal of Law. And then I have Banu, who is going to join in from Turkey. She's the acting chair dean for her university and also a professor. Then I have Samir Brahmachari. I don't know if he'll be joining in here, something which has come up, but he said that he would try. And that is, he would be there if he's there. He's the head he was the director general for CSIR, but I'm not sure if he'll be joining in tomorrow. But then we have N.R. Bhanumurthy, who is a professor, full professor at NIPFP, which is one of the largest planning for public finance institutions in this country, and editor of various journals, and also heads a research foundation which actually sponsors a large number of research activities. Then I have Brahmya Maitri, who is an old friend of mine again, who is currently heading as the IIM Tiruchirappalli director, a very nice man from NHR OB perspective, very humble man, a real humane person. Then I have my colleague, Dr. Yamini Agarwal, addressing from the Institute's perspective. And then we will be listening to His Excellency, Dr. I can't pronounce his name correctly, but he's again an old friend. I've known him for 10 years. He's been on a board with me a couple of places, and also on a Banking Frontiers board for advising. And so we're meeting frequently. He's the former deputy governor of Sri Lanka. He was there for almost 9 years as the deputy governor for Sri Lanka between 2000 to 2009. And he is going to give the valedictory address, followed by a sum up by Professor Dr. Saurabh Agarwal, who serves on various boards of Government of India, of SHM, and various other agencies. I thought I'll just end this session with this brief up. And thank you for your time, Priyanka. Thank you, Kai, and everyone who has joined us. Thank you for sparing this time. And we look forward welcoming you all at all other webinars and series. All our webinars and workshops are free of cost. Anyone and everyone is welcome to join. We look forward for more participation and active participation to take this message forward. The videos will be put on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. We have over 450 videos in this YouTube channel for access by people across the globe. And we have people who come across and see them with all educational programs. Thank you, Priyanka, again. Thank you, Kai.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you, Professor.